Hi everyone, it's me, Tim. Today I want to talk about the number of vaults in Fallout. It's Friday Fun Day, so I want to talk about something fun. This is just me talking about it. It's not canon. Things I say aren't canon. But I thought it'd be fun to revisit this after my video months ago about the vaults being used as experiments, which I'll get to. So, the original design for vaults was that there was going to be 1,000. And the only reason this pin was even placed in the original game was when Leonard was doing the vault suit. He asked me how many digits he'd need to keep on the back. Because we had Vault 13, but he wanted to know, are there going to be vaults, 106, if they're going to be a vault, 1,218. And I thought, well, let's just say there's a round number. There's 1,000. And I still remember he had 4 digits. And I'm like, no, I'm a programmer. I start counting at 0, 3 digits. So off he went. He made the vault suit. There was enough room to do 3 digits if it was needed. And that was it. Didn't really think much more of it past then. And then later, like much later, we started revisiting this idea. And it went something like, hey, if each of these vaults held 1,000 people, that's only 1 million people that are going to be saved in Vault-Tec vaults, which is way less than the population we imagined of the US. If it was 200 or 300 million people, then 1 million people that's not even 1%. That's like 1/3 of 1%. So if you think of these super wealthy people in the US being the top 1%, like it's often portrayed now, there's not even room for them. And even if you assumed half of them had their own personal vaults to escape into in case of nuclear war, which probably was not the case, there still wasn't enough room for the top 1% to fit into all those Vault-Tec vaults. So, and by the way, when we were numbering the vaults and I said I'd be a programmer and I number them 0 to 999, it was later I thought, ooh, Vault 0, that sounds like a control vault, the null vault. And that led to the experiment idea. You should probably watch my video, I'll link it below, on vaults as an experiment, because that's not what I want to talk about. So now that we've kind of figured out what's going on, that, okay, there were plans for 1,000 vaults, they're not going to hold everybody. Where would these vaults be done? Where would they be built? Now, we made a flag with 13 stars in it. I should say, the artist did that. And according to Leonard, they just did it because it looked cool. And later on, that became, there were 13 commonwealths. Well, 13 doesn't divide into 1,000, and that bothers my brain. The states still exist, so let's look at it at a state level. So there are 50 states, 1,000 vaults. That would mean every state should have 20 vaults, thereabouts. Now, bigger states would have a lot more. Smaller states would have a lot less. Texas probably needed more than 20 vaults. I don't think Rhode Island would need 20 vaults. So I'm sure it's not distributed evenly, but let's just use that as our guesstimate. We're looking at about 20 vaults per state. Now let's go back to Fallout 1 and 2, which I worked on. Now, Fallout 1 was middle of California and all of Southern California, like Bakersfield, Fresno area, south. So that's about half of California. Fallout 2 was that area and to the north, because it went all the way up to Klamath. So that's all of Northern California. So together, Fallout 1 and 2 were pretty much the entire state of California. California's a pretty big state, so you'd expect at least 20, but Fallout 1 and 2 combined only had about 4 to 6 vaults in them that were clearly defined. And that's if you count a couple of the unnumbered ones, like whatever Harold's vault was. I mean, if you just look at numbered ones, I think there were only 4. So if you throw in a couple more for the unnumbered ones, you get 6. Now, the TV show, which was also set in California, because it was in the Los Angeles area, they added 4 more, 31, 32, 33, and 4. So they added 4 more vaults. That still only gets us 10 10 vaults for the entire state of California. Big state, 10 vaults. So you'd expect at least 10 more out there that the games, excuse me, the games and the TV show haven't touched. That's still, not a lot of vaults. Now, when I played Fallout New Vegas, which I played multiple times, great game. It's on my masterclass list. I'll link that below. It felt when I played it like it had a lot of vaults. It felt like it had a ton of vaults. Well, turns out that was just a gut feeling compared to Fallout 1 and 2. I mean, if those two games together only had 6 vaults, then Fallout New Vegas felt like it had way more than that. Guess what? They had 7. There were only 7 vaults in all of Fallout New Vegas. Now, it made me curious why they had so many. It felt like they had more than California, especially Nevada being a smaller state. But if we could have roughly 20 per state, Nevada's still on target for the number of vaults they should have. 7 is not an unreasonable number of vaults to have in Nevada. Even if there were 3 more and they only had 10, you'd still expect them to have that many. It's a fairly decently sized state. So that led me thinking, okay, even when you look at California, it seemed underserved with vaults. You look at Nevada, it also felt a little underserved with vaults. So what's going on? Well, I think the obvious conclusion here is Vault-Tec. They didn't build all 1,000 vaults. They didn't even come close. And I think this makes sense when you think of Vault-Tec. Now, I know some of the Fallout games showed that vaults were still under construction when the bombs fell. So you could argue, well, they were planning to do all 1,000 and they just never made it. They never got there. But the show kind of implied that there were vaults in Canada and Mexico as well, which meant maybe they were building more than 1,000. But we don't see anywhere close to that in the estimates I've given for these games that covered an entire state. So we should know most of the vaults. And even if you say we didn't discover them by a factor of 2, we're still a little underserved for vaults. And I think if you look at the games, all the games together and the show, I think my estimate would be Vault-Tec had probably built fewer than half, probably far fewer than half the vaults they were supposed to. And then you have to go, well, why was that? How could that be? What's going on? And I think the answer is simple. Vault-Tec. Like I said in a lot of my other videos, when you have a question about the game industry, the answer is usually money. Vault-Tec, the answer is obviously money. Not only did they win the contract from the government by underbidding, severely underbidding, they probably also underplanned and underscheduled and probably just didn't even think they were going to do them all. It's not a leap from them being the lowest bidder to them then building some really shoddy vaults, to them planning to underbuild, to underserve all the states. It happens in real life. If you watch the news, there are a lot of companies that get government contracts to take care of roads, to take care of bridges, to build more internet infrastructure. They get the money, they take the money, and then they don't do it. If that happens in our real world, and we've clearly pointed out that the United States under Vault-Tec was far more corrupt and bottom line driven than even our United States, then it's not a big leap that they underbuilt these things. So my point in all this is, even though it's canon that there were supposed to be 1,000 vaults, I think in my non-canon brain, there were far, far fewer than 1,000. When you add in the fact that Vault-Tec probably knew they weren't going to build 1,000, and the ones they were building were really bad, you can see where the experiment idea might have come in. It's like, hey, we're not going to build all these, so we're not going to get a lot of people saved. So saving people obviously isn't the goal. What if we did this other thing instead? So I think that is also the number of vaults you see out there is kind of more evidence that Vault-Tec not only was a money-grubbing, greedy company, but probably something else was going on. And anyway, that's my fun Fun day, Friday, thought experiment about Fallout and the vaults. Hope you liked it.